Jason Graystone, welcome to Let's Grow Young.
Thanks for having me, mate. Pleasure being here.
I got to say, this is a bit surreal, and I've had some industry leaders in longevity, health, biohacking come onto this, but I'm actually feeling pretty nervous today because I'm sure the viewers aren't aware at the moment, but I've been on a 6 week YouTube, kind of YouTube. Well, what do we call it? Should we call it a master?
Experiment?
Oh no, I think it's a way more than that. I think it's a master class. It is a 6 week course full of nuggets and hacks that can get your YouTube channel hopefully matured in a way which I wouldn't expect. So I'm sitting here with the master. I'm the mentee, and I'm really conscious of not screwing this one up. But it's been an awesome course, and I'm sure other people will get the benefits of it too. So thank you for kind of I almost felt invited to that course through a common connection that we have, and it's been a great 6 weeks.
Amazing. I'm glad you enjoy it. Yeah. Just sharing everything I've learned over the last almost 10 years
Yeah.
and condensing it down into little bite-sized chunks, which I think everyone's really appreciated.
Yeah. And if you look at Jason's studio compared to mine, right, this is the journey that I want to go on and say. So I've got a vase in the corner there. I've got an elephant from Thailand there, and
Awesome. Stories.
I must say, but look at Jason's setup there. I think eventually the journey may take us there, but it's great to have you on. Um, Jason, rather than me explain who you are, and if people don't already know who you are, I don't know where they've been hiding. But how about you kind of just give us an overview of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not really an industry leader of anything, but I am a guy who decided that there was a lot of BS around finances, a lot of BS around, financial freedom advice in general, wealth building advice. And I thought one day I'm just going to start sharing the truth and, strategic pathways to actually designing and creating a life that inspires you and getting to a point where you are free. And it's a process that I was intrinsically motivated to do myself from a young age. And when I started sharing some of the concepts and some of the principles online, they were really well received. And we got a great following, we got a great community. And I thought, I need to do more of this. So I guess I'm known as a investor and trader, but the depths of me is a young boy yearning for security who dedicated his life to figuring out how to become financially free, and that's what I help people do. My background is primarily retail trading, so I trade my own money. I haven't actually worked for an institution as a trader. I've been connected to a lot of prop firms, proprietary trading firms, and I've grown, great friends in those spaces. But I was an engineer. I was an electrical engineer. So my background is actually I was an electrician, and then I went into electrical engineering, then software engineering, and then I just you know developed this love of coding and software, and then I just went into trading. So yeah, it's been a long ride, but here I am. And this studio I'm sitting in, I just got my tools out recently to start putting some of the cabling in here. So it's been fun getting my hands dirty again, to be honest.
Yeah, I've been watching that project online from the moment you were laying what looked like foundations or the base,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
putting the roof on. It was quite inspiring. Jason, having followed you for some time, and I know you're huge on YouTube, and I think that happens as an output of the product you put together, rather than potentially you going out to get, for example, 10 million views on your financial freedom episode. Um, you mentioned that this started as a kid to get security, but I think as a kid, you always wanted a BMX, right? And how did you go about getting that BMX?
Yeah, there was a pivotal moment in my life um, when I felt like I'd kind of discovered fire. I grew up on a council estate in South London in a place called Morden, which is basically the end of the Northern Line, and it was an estate called Hatfield Mead, and I lived there from when I was yeah, basically 4 or 5 years old to when I was 18. And every Friday, all the parents used to kind of congregate. I was about 13 at the time. All the parents congregate at the foot of our block on these steps, and they used to talk about the week and moan and bitch and all that. And I noticed that they really had this negative view towards money. It was like, oh, why can't my boss just give me his money? Or why can't, you know, why? It was just this negative view towards money. And I remember picking up on it. And the reason I picked up on it is because at about 7:30 every Friday night, this guy called Roy used to come down and collect everyone's money and go and do a syndicate lottery. And for the next 10 minutes after they'd been moaning about money, their faces would light up about how amazing it would be to win the lottery. And I just remember thinking, that's really weird. They've just said money's bad. Is it bad? Is it good? And, I didn't really get what was going on, but I just remember thinking, this is just strange. And coincidentally, that year, just leading up to my 14th birthday, I wanted this Mongoose Sniper BMX. It was a chrome BMX from a shop called Pearson's in Sutton. And I would do anything to have this BMX. I printed out a load of photos from the catalogue using the photocopier in our local VHS rental store. And I put these photocopies everywhere in my flat to give my parents hints. And in the end, they came to me and they said, look, we know you want the BMX. We can't really afford it. It's a bit out of our price range. It was only like £200, but my parents didn't have any money. And my stepdad and my mum, that is. And they said, however, if you raise half the money, we'll pay you £100 on your birthday and you can go and pick the bike up. And I was like, that's a deal. I had no idea how money was made. I thought you just get it out of the wall. I really didn't have a clue. So I looked down I thought, right, how am I going to make money? So I looked down at the estate. There was this green that we have in the middle of the estate and there was cars parked around it. And I thought I'll just go and wash some cars. So I went out, washed one car. And then that day I washed this white Volkswagen Golf GTI for this lady called Lynn. She gave me £5 plus £2 tip. That night I went up to my room and I was telling my friend about it. And my stepdad came in and he said, look, I'm going down the shop. Do you want anything bought back? And for some reason, I gave him the entire earnings. So I went back to zero, gave him the £7, and I said, could you get me a bucket and a sponge and a squeegee? And the next day, my friend who I was telling about it, he helped me. And we did 4 cars. Then I got another bucket and sponge, and we had 4 friends within 4 weeks doing all the cars, and I wasn't doing the cars. I was just knocking on the doors, making the sales, collecting the money, and all this kind of stuff. And it was a moment where I realized that money's actually great if you use it like this. And I figured that everyone who is miserable about money actually isn't using it as to what it's. They're not investing it. They're not using it for delegation. They're not using it to do more of what they want to do. And I felt like I discovered fire, It was a real pivotal moment, and I thought I'd cracked it. So that was a massive turning point. Those 2 events were massive turning points in how I figured out how to create freedom using money and do more of what I enjoy using money. And I took that then later into my professional life.
Amazing. It probably explains. My son's just turned 18, my oldest son, and I'm finding pictures of Golf GTIs left around the house.
It's a great car.
I've had every single Golf GTI when I was a kid. Well, when I was there.
I always wanted a Golf, but I've never had one. I always wanted one. I've never had one.
I'm sure you could get one now if you wanted one.
Yeah.
So yeah, my son keeps leaving pictures of photos of them around, and I've just worked out why now. Just remind me of how old you were when you started washing the cars.
13.
13.
Yeah, it was about 6 months before my 14th birthday. I think it was April.
And it sounds like when you use words such as use money like this, had you seen experiences even up to the age of 13 where you had seen people not using money in the way that you would expect? So you seem to have made a distinction between how money should be used as opposed to how it's being used at the moment at that time by people.
Yeah, well, up until that point, I just assumed money was this thing that gave everyone misery. Like my mum would go and do the odd job to keep a roof or keep us going, and she would have to spend it, and it would be, oh God, it comes in, it goes out, that kind of attitude. And that seemed to be the attitude of everyone. I didn't have any peers. There was all sorts of walks of life on the estate, but there was no one really talking positively about money ever. It was just, oh, money, I need more money. I need. It was all this kind of scarcity kind of mindset. And when they did get it, it was like, oh, but every time you get money, there's a big bill or there's a big thing or big breakdown. And, it was just not a nice subject. So I think where I grew up in a house where bailiffs knocking on the door, no electricity, pitch black, all this kind of stuff, hide behind the sofa from the people knocking on the door and all this. I just grew up with this yearning desire for security. It wasn't money at all. It was just security. I didn't have a dad. I just yearned for security. And then as I grew up and I started going into the world and that moment with the car wash, the money I linked to having ultimate and supreme security, because it was like, I'm controlling how much I earn here. I'm controlling, what I'm doing, and I'm actually doing less of the horrible stuff and I'm doing more of the good stuff. And money is the thing. By using money a certain way is what's allowing me to do that. I was paying my profit to my friends and taking a smaller portion of a bigger pie, but I was doing cooler stuff. And I was still getting what I wanted. I had to delay the gratification a little bit, and it took me a little bit longer to get the bike than if I'd just gone out and done all the cars myself. But that was the light bulb moment. It was like, you can have it all. You can have it all. And when I linked that to money, it wasn't necessarily just the money, but it was the way you use the money that gives you security, gives you peace of mind, gives you freedom, makes you more creative, makes you more calm. And it was just this feeling of, wow, this money can do this if you use it this way. And that's still, I still feel that way today.
It's absolutely amazing. I think at 13, I was wasting so much of my time, but clearly your chase for the BMX, but your chase for the BMX and so on has rewired some habits which have clearly stuck with you. Now, one of the things I always come across with some of my clients is, and I kind of look into lifestyle medicine, and it's to do with exercise, nutrition, sleep, stress resiliency, community, toxic substances, etc. Is when we get onto health, people are quick to distinguish between financial health and physical health and even physical wealth. And often a coach will say, look, don't fixate so much on money if you're obese, if you've got diabetes and so on and so forth. I have to say, I've never fully agreed with that. And I do think you can go too far. What's your thoughts on financial resilience, financial kind of comfort in relation to managing those other pillars of your life?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk around balance and work-life balance and getting that sweet spot. But the thing is, I believe, wealth, the word wealth actually comes from an old English word called welle, which means well-being. So if you're talking about what actual wealth is and what health is, it's actually interlinked, it's intertwined. And the way I look at it is this: money is a medium for fair exchange, and it's basically survival. You need money to survive. That's it, right? So if you stop looking at money as this thing that you're a slave to, and you look at it as a medium for fair exchange, where you can take as much of it as you like. It's in circulation and it's there for the taking. Depending on what your output is, will be determined on what your income is. And if you're managing it the right way, you can have a fantastic life. So when you look at it that way, really the next goal is to know when enough is enough. Because I've spent some time on a yacht in Dubai last year, and there was a couple of millionaires and there was a couple of billionaires there, and they were all moaning about the next thing and pushing for this, pushing for that. Their staff, they hated all their staff, and I felt like the most successful person there, and I thought, well, I'm just enjoying the sun, and I'm loving it. And the reason being is they always were chasing, like they were sacrificing today's happiness for tomorrow's profit, and tomorrow just never seemed to come. So I think being content, the key to being content is knowing where that milestone is, what you're aiming for, what your ideal life actually will cost. And when you get there, you can put a flag in the sand and say, this is where I'm content. This is what I was doing it for. And then you can reevaluate, and maybe you go again and you push a bit harder and you reevaluate your goals. But having that initial, that's what I want in life, that's so important, because people just chase and chase and chase. Then they lose track of why they're chasing. They lose relationships. They lose, friendships. They lose their health, and it's all in pursuit of something they don't actually know the end result of. And we spoke before this kicked off. You said there was a similar story. I'm sure you wasn't thinking about your end game. You was just going through the motions, trying to stay afloat and earn the next thing and get the next promotion, and you don't really ask why you're doing it. What are you doing it for? When is enough enough? And I think that question, if a lot of more people ask when is my enough, that's probably a great place to start. And then at least you know where you're going. So in terms of your question, I look at people like Richard Branson. I look at people like Warren Buffett. I look at people like Charlie Munger. I look at people who are the wealthiest people, Ray Dalio. These people are extremely wealthy and they're extremely healthy and they live happy lives. And I'm not saying that money is directly linked to your life expectancy, but it calms your brain and it reduces stress. But it doesn't do that if you're not controlling your lifestyle, right? So all of the people that I just mentioned, they are masters at wealth building. They've got that balance right. When it doesn't go right is when you are constantly increasing your lifestyle costs with your income. And when there's no room for error, it doesn't matter how much you earn, you'll still feel like a hamster on a wheel. And I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and celebrities even who are in that boat. It's like, they earn 250 grand and they're still stressed. They earn 300 grand, they're still stressed. They earn 500,000, they're still stressed. So it's more to do with the balance between your lifestyle costs and your income. And what does that come down to? It comes down to knowing what you're going after in the first place, so that you're not constantly raising and raising and raising. So get that right, and your health will increase. It just will. You become more calm.
Absolutely. I think if you don't have that financial health, then it does impact all the pillars. Your stress goes up, cortisol level goes up. You eat poorly. You have problems to sleep, and so to totally cut it off, I think, is wrong. But to go to your kind of analogy, you don't have to be a celebrity. Your average Joe, including me, I've been that prick who has had a promotion and a pay rise and gone to Canary Wharf Parlour and bought champagne for people, and then gone out and bought a holiday, which probably I couldn't really afford as much, because other people are doing it. I've had to get myself off that treadmill, recalibrate. And when people say to me, Sanj, we ain't seen you for so long at a party, we ain't seen you for so long, I think, yes, that's what I want to hear. Now let me start rewiring all that.
The thing with money is, like, out of all the areas of life, whether it's your health or your vocation or your relationships or your social leadership or even your spirituality, they don't too much affect each other. But wealth trickles down and affects them all. It will affect your relationships, it's just, even if you, like I always say, if you lend someone money, prepare to have your relationships deteriorated, because you're not a bank. And if the bank won't lend them money, you shouldn't either, unless you are happy for that relationship to deteriorate. Because no one wants to be owed and no one wants to owe. And fair exchange rules the game, right? So again, even with your relationships, if you're lending them money, that can destroy your relationships. If you're not giving them money, that can destroy your relationships. If you don't have money, it destroys your relationships. So it destroys your health. Like, you can't afford the best, maybe the foods or comfort or heating or medical costs or whatever it might be. It trickles down into all of them. So just accepting that and not seeing money as this kind of evil thing, but instead seeing it as a tool that it was created for, that is the fairest game on earth, you'll be stuck in a rut if you don't do that.
It's funny you mentioned Dubai. I lived in the Middle East for 7 years next to Dubai in a place called Bahrain. But I used to go to Dubai a lot, and it's a great place to go on holiday. But I get irked in Dubai, if I'm honest. I lived the expat culture for many years, and I constantly saw expats going back to the UK with more debt than they came with, despite a decade of tax-free living. That's because they were they were doing this. They were living the lifestyle you described, and had flipped the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So instead of being 7-year-old Jason trying to think about security at 13, start to do something about it, they started flipping it and they started going for the bigger houses, the bigger cars, and then all of a sudden leaving their Porsches at the airports because they couldn't afford to take them away. And so, yeah, it's absolutely right. I think if people know the hierarchy of needs, I think where you're coming in from is that if you ignore that top layer, hunger, security, and getting that financial freedom to create that, and you go straight to the bottom layer, which is more about self-esteem, you're going to end up in problems. And what I love about your framework is it goes back to the basics of that. And maybe this is a good segue to start talking about your steps to freedom. What are those layers, and what kind of mechanisms you can provide for the general public to learn how to execute?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, it is a pyramid of, there is a process, hierarchy. There is a hierarchy to everything. And with wealth building, what I see a lot of people trying to do is build a house with a deck of cards as the foundations and a concrete roof. And it doesn't quite work that way. You would build a concrete foundation, some brick walls, and a playing card roof, right? And the idea is that if the cards blow away, the house is still there. So when people build wealth, what they try to do is try and get rich as quick as possible. And the most common flaw in that approach is their mindset can't keep up with the volatility of growth and loss. So they'll have a big win, like you say, and you get cocky, you get puffed up, you get elated, you go and blow it all, you go and splurge it all, right? And the same, you have a big loss, you get depressed, you get fearful, it stops you from earning more money. And it's this cycle that goes over and over and over. And if you look at the behavior of people's bank account transactions, you can see the fingerprint. It's like they get paid, bang, and then it's a lot of the things come out the first day, second day, and it whittles away until bang, they get paid again. And if you look at the bank, you'll see an upper and lower level. And what I look at that as is people's self-worth, because the top end is where they are trying to get rid of that much money as quickly as possible because they don't feel worthy of it. And then when they get to a certain lower threshold, they're like, I'm worth more than this, which is typically why people don't accept lower pay. They always try and get pay rises, but once they get the pay rise, it's like a ratchet. They'll never go back because their standards have been raised, right? So when you look at the behavior of their bank accounts, what you see is when they have these big bonuses, those get spent very quickly. And when they go into a big overdraft or something, they feel a bit depressed. They work overtime. They hustle, and they get out of that quite quickly. And they keep themselves in this kind of comfortable band. So the first step is to recognize that and recognize, your self-worth and what your lower and upper limits are, where they seem to gravitate and where they seem to bounce. And then you want to build a pyramid. You want to build some stable security. So the first thing I recommend is calculating what your living costs are. And your first goal is to save 3 to 6 months of those living costs and just have that in cash, because this is where you start to unlock part of your brain, or you start to calm down part of the brain that's like your animal brain, your monkey brain, that cannot deal with complexity, doesn't have a great process oriented way about it. It can't deal with logic. So you want to ease that part of your brain so you can make better decisions, you can see better opportunities. And the way to do that is to have a cushion in the bank that that if all crap hits the fan, you're all right for 3 to 6 months. That's the best way you can do that. And then it's about earning your right to higher levels of risk. So once you've got that, your brain is calmer, then you might look at some low risk, index funds or something that's a a lower return, but it outbeats inflation, and you put 3 to 6 months in there, and then you've got some money working for you in a market that isn't really affecting, the volatility isn't affecting your mindset. They reckon that we can't, as humans, handle plus or minus more than 10% fluctuations in anything without getting emotional. So if we lose 10% of our net worth, or we lose more of 10%, we get a bit emotional. Same as if I paid you 20% more than you normally get on your weekly salary, you might get a bit cocky, and you might get puffed up and blow the money. So you want less than 10% fluctuations at all times. And the way to do that is to steadily earn your right to higher degrees of risk so that you can handle the next thing. If you're putting all your money into Bitcoin and you're kept up all night because you're looking at your phone app and the price going up and down, you shouldn't have invested in that. You shouldn't put your money in that. You're not ready for that level of risk. So first thing, build a buffer of cash. Second thing, get a handle on your debt to income ratio. So how much of your income is allocated towards paying the bank? That will have a direct impact on your well-being. That DTI ratio, understanding what that is, that will have a direct impact on your well-being and how you feel and how you talk to your family and how you snap at your kids and how everything. So understanding that and getting that ideally below 10 is the goal. And then once you've done that, it's understanding how to reduce your lifestyle costs so that you've got exactly what you need. I think what was great during COVID is it kind of reset. Everyone had a taste for financial freedom. They reduced their lifestyle costs because there was no keeping up with the Joneses. They sold a car. They really reduced their lifestyle costs. They got rid of all the unnecessary stuff because they couldn't show off to anyone. There was no one to show off to. They had a form of passive income coming in via furlough checks or bounce back loans or whatever it was. And they could also choose how they spend their day, or they could at least shuffle their day around in order of their own priorities. And that is financial freedom. That is financial freedom, where you're living below your means, you've got leveraged income coming in, and you're doing what you like doing in order of priority in your day. That to me is financial freedom. And I think COVID was a great eye opener for most people for that. And yeah, so I mean, that's the first part of it. Obviously it gets a lot more complex, but most people just don't have that. Most people aren't managing their debts. They're not managing their debt to income ratio. They're not, rationalizing their expenses. They don't have a buffer of cash based on their living costs. So that would be the first step, without going into too much detail.
A lot of the things you describe there, Jason, are pretty simple, right?
Very simple.
Conceptually. But your video around this got over 10 million views, which suggests to me that you've hit a nerve with people. Yeah. And so if you're not the 13-year-old who doesn't have a mortgage or put food on the table, what kind of advice do you give to people who need to start decluttering and asking themselves these questions? Because I think reducing the debt to income ratio, once your mortgage costs have gone up because you're on a variable interest rate post-COVID, the interest rates have gone up, but you've added other things into your life. What advice do you give to people to say, look, this is how you have a conversation with yourself? I know we can say, look at how much you're spending on meals, look at how much you're spending on cars, but for Sanj or anyone else to actually have the confidence and the stillness to say, stop, have a chat with yourself. What are the kind of habits and techniques that you encourage people to go through?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's expenses creep up every now and then, particularly today where there's loads of software and stuff like that, because this isn't just personal, this is in your business. There's all these AI softwares and things that you subscribe to, and after a time you think, flipping hell, that racks up. So what I'd recommend is every 6 months is to reevaluate, what you're spending your money on, and if it's because you want it or you're doing it to impress someone else. you can take things through and I do this as a family as well. I do this with your partner or even bring your kids in. But everyone's heard of an Eisenhower matrix. Maybe they haven't, but it's basically a way of making a decision based on priorities. So you want to look at all of the hot spots, first of all. So these are things, go through your statements and just go, wow, I didn't realize coffee was costing me £100 a month. Or I didn't realize
I just ordered £70 coffee yesterday, mushroom coffee.
Well, yeah, okay, that's different. But people going to Starbucks and they're spending £5 a day on coffee and they don't realize that that's actually a massive chunk of their finances. So they don't want to be doing that, right? So the next thing is to go through that, identify any red hotspots. And then after that, you want to be looking at basically either negotiating a better deal on that or deleting it or reducing it somehow, right? So you go through, make sure you understand when the dates are due for renewal. The next thing is some costs, work out whether they're valuable or critical. So critical are things like critical but not valuable are things like, your health insurance or something like that, or tax or a TV license, right? Where you've got to pay it, but you don't really value it. And you've got to go and do it. So those are things. But there's also things that are valuable, like maybe you go out for a meal with your family once a week, and that's a really valuable thing because you all get together and you love it. And you ask yourself, am I doing this for me or am I doing it to impress other people? If it's for you, great. But you might consider just doing it twice a month, or you might just do one really good one a month, or, and you kind of work it like that until you've got a list of things that you're spending your money on that are important to you.
Absolutely. I think you've described that so simply, and it is that simple. So we do the kind of weekly family meal, but it isn't always a plush restaurant. If it's a local fish and chips, or if it's a Nando's, absolutely fine, right? But it's about getting together. So you got the basics there. Now, because I stalk you a bit on YouTube, Jason, as do millions of other people, I know you have various other tools to take you from simple to more sophisticated. And so there are tools that you talk about accelerating financial freedom. I've just made that term up. It's not Jason's term. But you talk about things around AI, around crypto. There are tools you've introduced around stock picking as well that I look at. Again, what are your thoughts on how the world has changed to make it potentially easier for people to make investment decisions using AI?
Yeah, there's years ago, years ago, you just wouldn't have access to investments. You just wouldn't have it, the playing field was leveled when online retail trading and investing became available to the average Joe. So online platforms, access to brokers that you just wouldn't have access to. Trading platforms, analysis platforms, Microsoft Money, Yahoo Finance, all these things are showing you every company's financial statements and earnings reports. And we just didn't have access to that before. It'd be traipsing through expensive newspapers, Financial Times, and trying to stay ahead of the curve by doing that, or having some insider that could give you some tips. Nowadays, and coupled with AI now, you click at the click of a button, you can analyze an entire company's behavior, profit and loss, cash flow statement, balance sheet, income statement, how they're using their cash efficiently in the business. You can look at price to equity ratios, price to book ratios. You got all the information there, like to make an informed decision on a great investment. So that is one side of it, and that's a great side of it. But with great power and accessibility comes great fuck-ups and responsibility, right? Because not only do we live in a time where it's never been easier to make more money than ever before, it's also a time where it's never been easier to lose your entire net worth at a click of a button. Particularly with the scams and all the rest of it going on. So you do have to be educated. You still have to understand what you're doing when you're looking at these ideas and these opportunities. Otherwise, you can just add fuel to the fire. The accessibility that you have access to today can actually be the thing that kills you very quickly. So yeah, be careful.
Correct. And if there's some tools out there that you use on a regular basis, are you happy to quote what tools they are if people want to go and research
Yeah, I
them or
mean,
use them?
one of the amazing tools, that I've been part of developing over the last 5 or 6 years is something called Forecaster. It's incredible. I mean, it's just amazing. It's a tool that I use daily now. When I first started using it, properly, it almost made me cry because the amount of time that I'd wasted. Not the amount of time that I wasted, but if only I'd had it earlier. And these tools are just, they're at your disposal. But like I say, if you don't know what you're looking at and you're just gambling, then you've just got to hope and pray that you get a good result, where that's not a sustainable approach. So you still have to understand what you're looking at using these tools, but the information that it collates and the way that it presents it is such a luxury now. It's never been easier.
I'm going to try and use Forecaster. It's forecaster.biz, right? And I'm going to...
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to try and use it a bit more. I've got a teeny amount of spare cash at the moment, which if I lose it, I lose it. I'm not going to lose sleep over. But I'm going to try and use forecaster.biz to try and pick 5 stocks to put it in and see where it takes me. Because there's something you said on one of your classes, and we will share the link to Jason's classes. I think you described forecaster.biz as basically giving you access to all the information that you've been learning over so many years as a trader, but through the use of a tool which uses AI. And it's I used to read Warren Buffett's Bible security analysis book, and then I used to read other books, and I used to make notes, and I used to say, sharp ratios, look at sharp ratios in mutual funds, look at the PE ratios, put it into a spreadsheet, and it was such a pain in the ass.
I know, yeah. What used to take me, I used to do it about every 3 or 6 months, and it used to take me a good few days to really analyze some good stocks and then form a watch list. Now it can take me like under an hour. Crazy.
Yeah. And earlier, I'm going to go now from really basic investing to current day. Earlier, you talked about exchange traded funds, ETFs and index funds. Do you view these as, so someone's been through your framework, they've sat down with their family, done the Eisenhower, so they've deleted a bunch of direct debits and standing orders from their accounts because it's a waste of money having multiple Netflix subscriptions, as I do, right? And Sky Sports subscriptions. They've identified additional cash flow that they can use elsewhere. How easily can people get access to ETFs? And I think for the layman, they're basically a product that just mirrors the movement of global indexes, whether that's FTSE 100 or S&P 500, etc.
Exactly. So when people ask about risk in investing, the first risk I talk about is company risk. So if you was to invest all your money into one company, all your eggs are in that basket, and if the company goes pop, so does your money. So the way around that is you go, oh, okay, well, what about I'll invest in Samsung and Apple and Nokia and Garmin, and you end up investing in a load of tech companies, which exposes you to sector risk. So sector risk, if the sector goes down, your money goes down, and we're trying not to we're trying to not get that below 10% volatility. So that's not necessarily a good idea either. So the way around that is to buy every company, buy the entire market, right? So let's just take the S&P 500, for instance. That is 500 of the top performing companies in the world. And you're investing into a fund that is managed by the brightest minds on the planet, who treat it like a Premier League relegation type scenario where they're constantly analyzing these companies whilst you're asleep. And the ones that are underperforming, they kick out and they get new ones in. And the idea is there's a 10% return per year, year on year on year. And you own a sliver of each of those companies by investing in one of these funds. So by doing that, you're going to have a great sustainable return over a long period of time, and your risk and your requirement for you to spend a lot of time doing it is relatively low. It's very low, and it's almost automated. So if everyone just did that, they would be a lot better off than doing nothing or trying to gamble on the next Bitcoin or crypto or something they know nothing about. They might have a big win, but over time they'll give it back.
And Jason, going on the other side of the spectrum, I've got to ask you about crypto. And I've seen your videos on crypto, I think, and your assessment. A lot of people think they've missed out. What's your thoughts on crypto?
A lot of people, they think they've missed out. Yeah. Look, you've missed out. If you feel like you've missed out, it's because you haven't done your research and it's not something you should probably invest in anyway. You know, you are ready to invest in something when you understand it. That's it. So if you've ever got a fear of missing out, it's because you don't understand the thing well enough to be in it in the first place. So you're actually better off out of it, if that makes sense. If it has, piqued your interest and now you do feel like you've missed out, but you've got a burning desire to find out more about it, then that's the next step for you. You have to understand and believe in the future of it, and you have to know what's happened historically, and you have to know what it stands for and understand how it works and use it yourself. And that's the only way that you're going to have any sort of confidence to go in for the long haul. If you don't, if you're just thinking, oh, I need to get in on the next one, and then you just ask Dave down the pub if it's a good idea to get in now, and he says yes, and you get in, you're not going to sleep very well at night. I've told people about my Bitcoin, and they say, you believe in it? Is this a good thing? It's a good. And I say, yeah, I'm always investing in it, but that doesn't mean that you should get in. And I say, whatever you do, just don't watch it. Don't watch it. And then the next day, it's gone down again. It's gone down. It's gone up. And I'm like, I don't know, has it? Because I'm not in that place where I'm worried about it. So if you're worried about the day-to-day movement of an investment vehicle, you shouldn't be in it in the first place.
Absolutely. And finally, Jason, just to kind of bring this back holistically, in your videos, you talk about the older you get, the less free time you actually end up getting. How important is all the other stuff in your life, and how does that contribute to the amount of time that you spend doing stuff which really is more transactional rather than that you enjoy? And I know through connections that you like exercise, but family time, nutrition, sleep, holidays, how do you manage your habits around all that to contribute to the lifestyle that you've got at the moment?
Yeah, I try and just fill my time doing as much of the things that I enjoy or find enjoyable. And again, a lot of people have a fantasy about what that looks like. One of the biggest things the first question I ask people when I work with them is, what do you want more of? What's your goal? Why do you want financial freedom, or why do you want better finances? And they're like, spend more time with the family. And I say, how much time? And they look at me and they're like, what do you mean? Just more time with my family? And I say, well, I tell you what, if I granted your wish on Monday and you had to spend 24 hours a day with your family, do you think you might, I wouldn't want to spend 24 hours with my family. I don't know anyone that would, right? But the point is, because they haven't actually thought about it and put a number on it or got realistic about it, if they were to achieve that or suddenly be granted that on Monday, they would start feeling guilty because they thought that they should want more time with their family. But in actual fact, no one really wants to spend every minute of the day with anyone. You would start to feel this guilt. So it's important to quantify exactly what you want. And it goes back to what I said earlier about knowing where you're content, knowing what you're actually going after, and moving towards that sensibly, not just hoping to get somewhere, having some lucky win, ending up in a position where you're still depressed because it wasn't what you thought it should be. And that's what Always Free is about that. It's about designing a life that actually, by design, so that when you get there, everything's balanced, everything's as you expected it to be. There's no mishaps or side swipes, right? So just be cautious of that. Just make sure and I'm not saying like, yeah, okay, I want to spend 5 hours with my family. I'm just maybe say it in a way like, I'd love to be able to choose to spend 3 hours picking my kids up, doing this with them and what have you. But don't just say things, throwaway comments like, oh, I want to spend more time. How much time? How much money? How much does the car cost? What is the dream house? What does that cost? How many times do you want to go away? What does that cost? What sort of delegation do you want? Do you want a cleaner, a cook, a gardener? How much do they cost? Get it all down so that at least you know what you're going for, and it'll give you something quantifiable to actually measure and hit.
And reconstruct your life around that. I think, Jason, that's been absolutely brilliant. How do people get hold of you? Again, I go to the start if they haven't already heard of you.
If you want to get hold of me, you can go to all the socials, Jason Graystone. There are a lot of fake accounts, so just make sure it's the right ones. And Jason Graystone YouTube channel or jasongraystone.com.
Great, Jason. And I think to conclude, I'll conclude very quickly. You do talk about your videos about life being like a game of Tetris. And what I'm taking away from this interview at the moment is that life is indeed Tetris, but you don't have to have every block fall into place in the right area. You just need to focus on the right blocks. And that's what I'm going to do.
And just enjoy it. Just enjoy it.